Hello, and welcome to Health and Fitness Redefined. I'm your host, Anthony Amen. Join me today as we take a dive into the world of health and fitness, where we learn to overcome adversity, to pick back jurisdiction, and see health and fitness in a whole new light. I am amped up from last week's episode, so I highly recommend you guys go check that out. I actually pounded my desk and how excited I was talking about that topic. But before we dive into this week's episode, I first want to talk yet again about our online training program we now offer through Redefined Fitness. Yes, that's right, guys. If you are a podcast listener, you can now get personal training advice from me and my trainers. We're going to work with your schedule, customize your workouts, work with what you have in front of you. Maybe you go to a gym, maybe you just have your house. We're going to customize everything for you, get you on track all through our Redefined Fitness training app. It has a workout library of over 2,000 different exercises, shows you how to do them, shows videos of how to do those exercises. We track your nutrition on top of that. This is an all-encompassing app. Go check it out, www.redefined-fitness.com. Yet again, that is www.redefined-fitness.com. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. We hopped in last week all about nutrition. This week, we're hopping right back into mental health because mental health plays a big, important goal in your health, period. If you don't have mental health, I don't really think you have much. So that's why I'm really excited to get this guest on to share her story. It's a sign of hope. I'm excited to learn more about it. So without further ado, let me welcome to the show, Lynn. Lynn, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on today.
Thanks very much, Anthony. It's wonderful to be here and meet you.
And it's an absolute pleasure to hear your story because I have only heard tidbits of it, and to really dive into it more for our other listeners, because a lot of people suffer from psychological issues, whether it's depression, anxiety, bipolar, which is what we're talking about today, borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia. There's so many, and it's such an untouched realm. And people think, especially with depression, that it's a one and done. You have depression, you're never getting over it, especially with manic depression disorder. And it's just so not true. There's ways to rewire your brain. There's ways to get through it. There's always a chance. That's how I'm going to start the show. I usually end it like that. So I'm going to go and ask you and kind of tell us what happened. Give us life into your life and walk us through what happened.
Okay, well, when I was 30, I was diagnosed with major depression. I took antidepressants for 4 years, and then I stopped taking them because they just weren't sitting right with me. I couldn't sit still. I was always pacing around the house. And looking back, I know the depression came on slowly over a number of years. There wasn't one single incident that led to it. So I stopped taking them, and then a few months later, I ended up in the hospital having a full-blown breakdown of some kind. Had no idea what it was at that point. I was hallucinating, psychotic, paranoid. And then we'll just fast forward a year later, I ended up in the hospital again. And that's when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and put on major heavy-duty antipsychotic medication. And life was okay, but then a few months later, I was in the hospital again for being manic. And this time, the doctors did something really interesting. At my first hospitalization, I kept saying, "The truth shall set you free. The truth shall set you free." And this time, the nurses kept asking me questions about my childhood, my hobbies, my family, anything about my life. And they kept telling me I had to tell the truth. And I thought, this is weird. I always tell the truth. And then a nurse asked me how my marriage was. I hesitated for about 3 seconds and replied, "Fine." And I could feel some sort of shifting or movement right here in my brain. And I went, aha, I just told a lie. So I think deep in my heart, I knew my marriage was had led to the depression, and it wasn't at least in part responsible for it. But I didn't want to face it. I had young kids, and who wants to end their marriage, right? So I made plans to leave my marriage, and I went out on my own, found a full-time job. I was working, I was happy. And then, of course, many people with bipolar go on and off their medication because of side effects. The side effects can be very extreme. So I went off it, and I got what's called hypomanic, where you feel really wonderful, and then it turns to mania. And I was working, I couldn't perform how I used to at my job. Like this job I loved, I was given a monetary award for learning my tasks so quickly, and then I couldn't concentrate. And I went to bed one night praying what I was going to do about it, because I was so sick and letting the company down. And when I woke up in the morning, I heard the song "Don't Worry Baby" by the Beach Boys playing on the radio. And I get signs from the universe all the time, especially when I'm hypomanic. And when I heard that song, it was "Don't worry, baby, everything's going to be all right." I thought, okay, I need to hand in my letter of resignation. So I resigned that day. I left work. I called my psychiatrist because I had no idea what I was going to do. And that's when he looked me in the eye and said, "Lynn, you'll never work full-time again." I was 39 years old, and I was devastated. I didn't know how I was going to go on. I was told to apply for disability, and that was a real blow to my self-esteem. I had to swallow my pride and accept basically, taxpayer government handout for a while. And then after this psychiatrist said that, I said, I need a second opinion. And unfortunately, the second psychiatrist agreed with him. So that's the label I was given when I was 39 years old, and I didn't like it one bit.
Who would?
And then I started working very hard to see if I could ever work full-time again. I went to support for depression group. I read a lot of self-help motivational type books. I read books about mental illness and bipolar disorder. Specifically, what else did I do? I prayed, I journaled. The nurses at the hospital encouraged me to start journaling early on in my illness. And I worked very hard. Even when I couldn't work full-time, I either worked part-time for a few months or I did volunteer work. I felt it was very important to give back and be doing something useful to make myself feel good. And I remember that a turning point for me was one day I called my psychiatrist in tears saying, I have 3 strikes against me. I have nothing meaningful to do during the day. I'm deeply in debt. And I don't have a boyfriend, which was important to me at the time. And he wanted me to take a pill for anxiety, which I'd done many times before. But that day, I knew that was the quick fix. And I said, no, I need a long-term solution. I don't know what it is for sure, but that's not going to solve the problem. So I sent an email to a man who became my mentor. We just started emailing by chance one day. I've never spoken to him on the phone or met him. And he said to me, Lynn, stop feeling sorry for yourself. He basically gave me a good kick in the butt that day.
Good.
Yeah, it was what I needed. I know that. And he said, get out and talk to people, volunteer, look at all the positives in your life, be thankful for what you have instead of dwelling on what you can't do. So that very day, I went to a mental health drop-in center, and I realized I was further along in my recovery than a lot of people there. when I was first diagnosed with bipolar, I knew I wanted to help others someday. So I asked somebody at this drop-in center if I could talk about my recovery and the things I've done to help myself. And she said, yeah, sure, come on in. So I did a little 15-minute talk there, and then she gave me a few places to call to speak. This was about 15 years ago I did this. And things just started snowballing. Over a 2-year period, I did 100 talks in 2 years. But I wasn't making a living at it, and I wasn't working full-time yet. But during those 2 years, I wrote 2 books. One is called My Journey Back to Myself, which is specifically about how I learned to manage bipolar disorder. And the other book is called the F book, also known as Creating, or 7 F's to Creating Your Fantastic Future. Because I realized there were 7 words, all starting with the letter F, that contributed to my recovery.
Let me backtrack, right?
Go ahead.
Let's go a little more backstory, because a lot of people aren't familiar with this topic whatsoever. So it's important to really fill them in and have an understanding of it. We'll start with manic depressive disorder, which is what you mentioned before, where you first originally had. Can you explain what that looks like in a day from those looking on the outside in of someone who's suffering from that?
Okay, I'll read you the definition. It's called bipolar disorder now. Manic depressive disorder is the old name from 20 years ago. So now it's called bipolar disorder. It's a mental health condition that causes extreme mood swings that include emotional highs, called mania or hypomania, and lows, called depression. Now, for most people, when they get hypomanic or manic, they're in that phase for a week or more. It could be 1 week, it could be 6 weeks. And depression, same thing. What usually happens, you get hypomanic or manic, and then you crash. When you're hypomanic, you're just going all the time. You can't stop. Ideas are coming to your head very quickly. It's just a crazy, crazy time in your head. And then you crash and you get depressed after. And the depression can last anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. I figured out that if I'm hypomanic for a week, I would be depressed for a month. Every week of mania or hypomania, I would have a month of depression after. I'm trying to think what is going around in my head. Like, I've hallucinated. I have these really strange thoughts about how I'm going to cure mental illness, save the world. Like, the thoughts that go around in your head are just bizarre in a way.
Yeah, it's crazy how the mind can, a different outlook depending on my favorite terms, just to kind of fill you in and kind of work myself through this, is you have positive and negative feedback loops, where if you have a positive feedback loop, you take something, it turns, like you said, that snowball effect of booking the talks. And then you start getting more of a serotonin dopamine hit over and over and over again. It's building. Whereas the flip side of it, depression, is the exact opposite. You don't wake up one day and go, oh my God, I'm super depressed. It slowly snowballs downhill. I think that's where a lot of people make that mistake of what is depression. At first it's something little, then it snowballs to something bigger, then it snowballs to something bigger. Why me? And before you know it, then you become what people see from the outside, super depressed, don't want to leave your house kind of deal. But it all started with one little negative cycle. And bipolar leads into it, where you don't know how to control that snowballing.
That's right.
Yeah. People understand that they can, to a certain extent, if you don't suffer from something like this, you can say, wait, what am I doing? I'm snowballing. let me try something else and change it. Whereas those that suffer from this, they don't have that rationale, or at least a real true understanding that they can stop it. So they just let it snowball down until it gets really hard and almost impossible to get over it. Is that accurate?
Oh, definitely. Like as a teenager, I was very happy-go-lucky. I had lots of friends. So when I was diagnosed with depression, I look back and thought, okay, when did this start? I was happy till I was 17 or 18. Well, I was 18 when I met the man that was to become my husband. And I have to admit, this is a little bit embarrassing. When we were driving to our honeymoon destination, I thought about getting our marriage annulled. And then I just said, Lynn, don't even think about it. You're married. You're going to be happy. So you see, that little thing was in the back of my head. I honestly forgot about it for 10 years at least. I just said, no, I'm going to be happily married. And it's not like my husband's a bad person. We were just like oil and water. We didn't mix. It just, we got 2 great kids. We were married for 17 years. I have no regrets. But like I said, there was that little thing in the back of my head telling me I shouldn't have done this, but I ignored it.
So when you start crashing, right? What's a thing that people can look out for? Is there some kind of, I don't want to use the word tick, but that's what it kind of feels like I'm going with. It's something that sets it off. Is it always the same thing? Is it something just completely out of the blue? What starts you on that downward spiral?
Well, just so you know, I have not been clinically depressed since 2004.
That's awesome.
Because I take my medication and I've done all the things I need to do so depression doesn't happen. And I get hypomanic once in a while, but it's always because good things are going on in my life.
Good.
Before I tell you what spirals to depression, when I look back at every hypomanic episode, I was trying to face an emotionally charged issue in my life. I was trying to face something difficult I didn't want to face. So I just became this, I don't know, my brain did something anyways. Now, depression, I can see life events have caused it. Like I said, it was my marriage. There was something else that came to light from my past that I dealt with. And that's when the depression disappeared for good.
So it's confronting these issues head on.
I strongly, strongly believe there is always a reason for depression. Like drug companies want to say, oh, you have a chemical imbalance in your brain. That's why you got depressed. No, the depression happens first. And that's what causes the chemical imbalance in your brain. 100%.
I want to make a reference back to those that may or not know me, but it's so true. When you hit that wall, right? It's always something that triggers it. And then, like I mentioned with positive, negative feedback loops, you hit that negative feedback loop, the same thing is going on in your brain. You get a chemical imbalance because you're upset. So your brain gets constantly used to not producing enough serotonin and dopamine. So that's what keeps you constantly upset. And it produces less and less and less. And that's the issue. Whereas opposed to if you started rewiring your thoughts to get more hits of it, you can create a positive feedback loop. And then before you know it, you're constantly not worrying or going into those depressive cycles because you've then rewired your thinking and rewired your brain to produce more serotonin and dopamine when you feel like life events happen. Because life events happen to everyone. You can't stop life events. You can't stop people dying. You can't stop people getting divorced and tragedy. You can't. But it's understanding how to deal with it and face a scenario head on, come up with a solution instead of just getting depressed about something. Figure it out. Like try to think, okay, what can I do to move forward from this? And that's going to create how your brain chemicals associate with the negative impact in your life. You train your brain to think differently.
So I will tell you, 2004, there were 3 life events that caused the depression. The man I'd been dating moved in with me, which was a disaster from the start. My mother died that year, and my daughter was acting out. So I had 3 major things in my life to deal with. I was still in debt too, probably. But those were the 3 triggers, okay? So a year later, in 2005, I asked that man to move out, and immediately I could feel something in my brain change because I'd made the right decision. I went to a bereavement group to talk about my mom's death, to get myself through that. And as for my daughter, I had a girlfriend that I talked to about her to get all the stress out of me that I needed to talk about. So like you're saying, there's always something you can do to retrain your brain. And I did those 3 things. And that's when I started feeling so much better. I started a weight loss program. I started going dancing again, which I love doing. Like dancing just gave me such a lift. And then it was 2006 when I started doing my talks. So things just kind of, started going up slowly over a period of a year or 2.
Yeah, it's so true. And I want to dive a little more into the specifics of behind all this, but we're going to do that after we take a quick break from our sponsor side, guys. So bear with us and we'll be right back. For us, we know what it's like to feel unhealthy, depressed, and downright defeated. We want to show others there is a right way, and through fitness, you could do anything you set your mind to. Fitness can give you that motivation, confidence, energy you need to bridge that mental gap and prevent you from missing important life events. We understand it's about feeling better, living longer, and being good examples for our kids. We understand this because we live it. And for us, that's the redefined difference. Hey everybody, and welcome back. We got Lynn here. We're talking really specific into how, if maybe you're suffering from this, if you know somebody, some steps you could take to start moving in the right direction. I know you were mentioning you wrote 2 books about it. So I would love to, for my audience's sake, to really give specifics and details about what they can do if either them or someone they know is going through this and how they can help themselves.
Okay, well, the first thing you need to do is you really do need to be medication compliant if you have bipolar disorder. You have to take something that brings down the highs and brings up the lows, so you're level, kind of. And it was when I became medication compliant that I started getting better as well. And I believe reading a lot about it and how you can help yourself, reading books about the brain are really, really good. You have to do the work on yourself. I believe the cure for any illness is 25% medication and 75% working on yourself and your issues. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Give us some specifics of how people can help, right? So we talked about the 7 F's you used and stuff like that. Break that down for us.
Okay, yeah. Like I realized 7 words all starting with the letter F contributed to my recovery. So the first is family. I didn't have a ton of family support because we're not close, but my aunt was very good. And my family was there for practical things, helping with the kids when I couldn't function at all. And I'm close to my kids now. They're adults. I see them all the time. So, and friends. I made new friends as a single woman, and I said I'll never give up my friends again for a man like I did years ago. Fun. It is imperative to have fun every single day of your life. It doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes or 2 hours. Find something fun to do every day. It might just be watching a TV show, playing with your kids. But these are, like I said, they're the things I needed to do to get better. Fulfillment to me is doing some kind of volunteer work, helping other people. I'm starting on my journey of public speaking again, which is really good. And I'm turning my F book also into a manual. I'm going to be a success coach. The F book is being republished again this fall. So I'm working on a success coach plan. People can hire me as a life coach to help them through their journey. Fulfillment, it's just anything that sets your heart on fire, that you just love doing. You can't wait to wake up in the morning and do.
Fitness. Another effort for you.
Yeah, fitness. Physical fitness is the F that's the hardest for me to achieve. I have a sweet tooth and I developed some bad eating habits over the years. But, you know, it's something I work at. Mental fitness, that's the number one thing for me, making sure I stay mentally fit by surrounding myself with people that care about me and doing the things that bring me joy. And like I do things like Sudoku puzzles, I knit, I have a vegetable garden. I do lots of things to keep mentally fit. You've always got to be using your brain. I read for about 20 minutes every day, a self-help type motivational book. Family, friends, fun, fitness, fulfillment, finances. People that get hypomanic and manic go on crazy spending sprees. We just think we can have whatever we want whenever we want it. And I got deeply in debt and I had to work my way to get out of debt. And to me, everybody needs a spending plan. It'll stop you from making impulse purchases. If you pay by debit or credit card, you spend 20 to 25% more money than you do if you pay with cash. For my weekly expenses, I take out cash. If I don't have it in my wallet, I can't buy it.
I love that. That's great financial advice.
And faith, that is what got me through my darkest times. I knew there had to be meaning to my illness. And for me, it's about helping other people. I know I've been rejected many times because I've told people I've had this illness, and it's happened recently. Because people look at me now and they have no idea that I have bipolar disorder. People that have known me for 5 years. But now I'm coming out and talking about it again. And like I said, there's still a lot of stigma attached to it. And my goal is to break down that stigma. I don't like labels. I just hate them. A motivational saying that got me through my darkest hours was, you can believe the diagnosis, not the prognosis. That's by Deepak Chopra.
Love it.
And I clung to that saying. I used to put Post-its up all over my house or apartment. with little sayings on them like let go and let God, or you can do this, or just little things to, like you said, rewire your brain. You're looking at that saying hundreds of times a day, and I still have Post-its above my computer. Things that I'm working on every week. I want to set my intention to the universe of what I want to accomplish.
I just want to point out, so like I said, for those that know me well, you go back to 14, 15, 16, and you can ask my parents. I had about 45 different quotes all over my wall, and I had a quote wall.
I have a little recipe box with all the quotes in them. I accumulated over the years, but I just put the ones in front of me that I'm working on. Like right now, my F book is getting self-published again by a professional self-publisher. And I'm working on my talks, getting them ready for the fall to do. But there have been so many things that have helped me. Like I said, motivational sayings, now songs. The universe talks to us in many ways. And I have had songs just scream at me to listen to the words. Like I told you that day I quit my job. What's another song? I don't know how this happened. Like crazy things happen when you're hypomanic because the electrical currents in your brain are all messed up, okay? I was downloading songs, this is 20 years ago, off the internet. You could do it for free. And one song downloaded all by itself. I didn't download it, and I know I didn't. Nobody will believe me, but it just appeared, and it's a song called I Am Woman. And I read all the words, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to be strong eventually.
I just have a question, Lynn, and I kind of want a little more guidance for everyone listening. If you were to give one piece of advice for someone going through a similar situation, what would be the first step of action you recommend them take?
Well, the first step is get a healthcare professional, a psychiatrist that can diagnose the problem and be medication compliant. That's the very first step.
What's step 2?
Get a social worker or therapist to talk to. Because, like I said, I believe the problems for me happened because I was repressing things. I didn't want to think about my life, and I just repressed. And by talking to somebody, eventually it comes out. Journaling goes hand in hand with that. If you just start writing things down that happened during the day, eventually things will come out, and it's like, where did that come from? Or write down 3 things you're grateful for every day.
I like that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, sometimes I couldn't even write down 3 when I was very depressed.
I love it. And I know we're just running a little short on time, so I just kind of want to ask you, if you were sitting with somebody, right, and they're talking about they have bipolar, they're opening up, they're starting their journey, what would be like a take-home message for them? What would be something you would tell them to say, hey, here's 1 or 2 sentences that I think you should hold on to and help you recover? It's a tough one.
Yeah, well, I get back to that quote. You can believe the diagnosis, not the prognosis. You have to do the work on yourself. You have to be willing to look inward and say, is what I'm doing working for me?
I love it. Is what I'm doing working for me? Look inward. That's awesome. And then I'm going to ask you the easiest question of all. If I wanted to get a hold of you, find you, get your books, where can I find you and get a hold of you?
Right now, it's just my email address. It's Lynn at the thefbook.ca. I'm in Canada. So
I
it's
love it.
YNN at thefbook.ca.
Love it. And thank you guys for joining us on this week's episode of Health and Fitness Redefined. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button and join us next week into the ever-changing field. And remember, I'm changing the ending, by the way, right now. It is no longer fitness is a journey, not a destination. It is now turning into Redefined Fitness' slogan. Fitness is medicine. Until next time.